Let's try one more thing here. Let's go ahead and do what we did before with the logo. And we're going to add a plane. I just want to see how this turns out. I'm going to take this plane, I'm going to rotate it forward, and we'll go ahead and scale it up. And we're going to use this plane to light our object in conjunction with, I think, the lighting environment. So on this plane here, we're going to type in area. We're going to drive an area light onto this thing. And of course, we'll change it to watts. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and crank this down quite a bit here. And then on the environment, let's go ahead and turn this brightness down to 0. And we'll also put in a ground plane here. Oh, we also need to turn on caustics back on. So we'll go ahead and go back up to jewelry. We'll do product mode, and we'll take this area light. We'll change it to maybe a warmer light here, and we'll crank it up. Double click this light here, go to advanced, we'll turn off visible to camera. And under the environment here, I'm going to bring up the environment brightness just a bit, just to see if we can get some reflections in there. And if we double click the ground plane here, we can go into the specular, and we can increase the specular of that and the roughness, so we can start getting a little bit of a reflection of the coffee in the ground plane surface. And of course, we don't even have to keep it as a ground plane. We can actually change this to just a shiny plastic here. So you can kind of dial in both of those looks to kind of get different effects here. And of course, if you want to do your final render, that's where you're going to go up here to your render tab here. We'll just go ahead and keep it a JPEG here. And for our presets, let's render this out pretty big. We'll go ahead and do 3840 by 2721. And again, I'm just going to go to a JPEG here. If we go to our options, I think this will be fine as far as quality here. So let's go ahead and hit render. And as that's going, sorry, I got sidetracked there for a second. While it's cranking, it's using all 32 cores here. I still can't go into ZBrush, and I can have massive models like this, 22 million point commander model in here, and you can see it doesn't really tax my system that much. In fact, ZBrush is pretty CPU intensive. Keyshot is pretty CPU intensive, but I can go through here and still work. I can go into solo mode here and still sculpt on this stuff. Let me see if I can find there it is, my Wacom tablet here. So if I want to, I can still continue working in here. I can be rendering images in the background. I could be capturing with Camtasia or streaming if I want to. I've got a ton of windows open on my internet tabs there. So we can go through here. Let's just do a really quick standard brush, drag rect. We'll go into alpha here. See, do I have any weave alphas textures? Let's go into my textures here. Let's go into patterns here. Yeah, let's try this one. I'm going to take this alpha 17. We're going to double click that, load it in. And now if we go down here to surface noise, we can go ahead and let's zoom in just a little bit. And actually I need to bring it in here. So I'm going to go to alpha on and off, and we're just going to go to our ZBrush 408 Z alphas cloth. We did alpha 17. There it is. So we've got alpha 17 loaded in here. So we're going to mix basic noise down to 0. We're going to take this noise, this alpha scale, and crank that down a bit. And we're also going to increase that strength here. We're just going to try to give this a little bit more of a cloth look. There we go. So we can kind of dial that in. Maybe that's a little bit small. We'll go ahead and scale that up just a bit, and then we'll pop that strength down just a little bit. And now when I hit OK, you're going to see now you got a little bit more of a cloth look. Of course, if you don't want it to show up on an area of your model, you can go in there. You can go through here and you can hold that control, and you can unmask that. If you want to apply this to the actual subdivisions here, go to geometry. We have 6 subdivision levels. We're working with 4.3 million points on here. So if we go down here, first thing I'd probably want to do is store a morph target and also go in here to my layers, and we're going to go ahead and add a new layer. So when I go to surface noise, apply to mesh, that's going to apply that cloth texture to my mesh here. But because I saved it on a layer first, I'm able to go through here, and if I want to, I can turn that layer down just a little bit, or I can over crank it. So I can go up to 5 and really kind of over crank it. So you know what? It was a little bit light. I'm going to hit 2. So we're actually getting a little bit more surface noise than we had originally intended. And now because, let's go ahead and hit bake all. And now because I stored a morph target, what I can do is I can switch, and that'll switch that out. And now I can go in here with my morph brush. Let's go BM morph right here. And now we can go through here, and we can actually paint in where I want that cloth texture to show up. And that gives it a much nicer looking feel, kind of being able to put that wherever I want. Of course, if I want the cloth to go everywhere, I don't need to morph that in. It's just kind of a bit of extra control here, so I can go back here to switch, and we can just have the cloth kind of sitting there, kind of dialed in. So let's take another look at our render here. About 25% done. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-Escape. And we can see under performance, this thing's just cranking away. So I'm going to let this go for a little bit. Again, it's rendering a pretty big image, so I'm just going to let this sit for a little while and finish out for me. All right, I'll let that go. It looks like I closed the window, but it took about 18 minutes. And it's a pretty massive file, and I spent that time looking at a different viewer since I don't like Microsoft's default Windows 10 viewer very much. So I went and got XNView. So I'm going to use that to view my image. So if we zoom in here really closely, you're going to see here's the foam that we made using that fractal noise. Here's a really large image that we rendered out. Now, one thing I noticed is that I forgot that the tessellation probably isn't that great on my model. Also, the image resolution for my environment map may not have been that high as well. So that's what's leading to some of this artifacting here. So what we can do to fix that, and I'm glad it kind of came up here, is let's go ahead and go back to, one thing you might notice is in Keyshot 7, you see how it kind of goes to kind of a weird looking model, and then as soon as I let go, it kind of reses in. That's what it's basically doing, is going into performance mode. As soon as I start tumbling, just so you can have a little bit faster interaction with your model on the fly, it's going into lighting performance mode. Ooh, maybe not even that bad. Let's see, it probably looks like it's going lighting basic mode maybe, or maybe in between those two, just to give you a little bit more performance. But then if you go back here to jewelry, that'll turn everything back on. But what I wanted to mention is if I double click this, if it was a NURBS object and I was in my scene here, and I have this selected, there would be an option for me to tessellate this object. If I go over here to Edit, Add Geometry, Cylinder, and I just shoot this out to the side here. Here's my cylinder here, and if you had any jaggies on this cylinder, I believe this would be a NURBS cylinder here. So with this thing selected, then go into Properties here, and you're going to see there's a retessellate. If I select this object and go into Properties, there is no retessellate because it's a polygon object. But you can do that with NURB objects. You can go here to retessellate. That'll open up the retessellate window. You can hit this button here, and then you can go here to tessellation quality and kind of drag that up and down to tessellate on the fly. Now, I can't subdivide this geometry within Keyshot, I don't think. But one thing you can do, let's go ahead and delete that cylinder here, is you can go in here and change these surface normals. So if I right click this and go into Edit Geometry, I can go into Edit Normals, and you can split, if they're separate objects, you can split them here. You can split surfaces here, so you can do some split operations within Keyshot. I'm going to go into Edit Normals here. I'm going to hit Calculate Vertex Normals. Then I hit Apply. And what that's going to do is go ahead and smooth my vertex normals. It gives me a much smoother surface without having to go in and subdivide the heck out of my geometry. I can smooth the surface normals, and now you're going to see I'm getting a much, much smoother result as I'm letting that res in. So that's my mistake. I should do a better render, but I just wanted to make sure. I'm kind of glad that happened, so I made sure to go over that. So you're going to see when we kind of zoom in here, already we're getting higher resolution. Now you can change the resolution if you were going to the HDRI editor and creating your own HDRIs. You could export those as 4K, 5K, 6K, 8K, whatever you want to. This is a 6K environment, so I was wondering, it seems like it should have been pretty sharp, and it was. It was my geometry that was doing all that nasty stuff. So you can see back here in this little back area, if we compare that to my previous image here, see how crappy that is? That was due to the faceting on my object. Just by changing my surface normal, we're getting a much better result, and now I feel comfortable rendering this thing out and getting a much, much higher quality result. But while I was doing that render using all of my CPU, I was going online, browsing. Hell, we were in ZBrush doing the surface noise and applying it to our model. We got a 23 million polygon model sitting here in ZBrush while we're working on a 5 million polygon model of the jacket here. So again, amazing processor. This is the Threadripper 1950X. I'm able to multitask like crazy and record at the same time. All this good stuff keeps me productive, keeps me happy, and also getting super high quality renders out of Keyshot as long as I remember to do the certain settings there. So I'm going to do another render on this one. I'm not going to let you sit here and watch me do it, but I think you get the idea. Make sure you go in here, soften your normals on these things, or tessellate the hell out of your geometry, but normal softening does the trick in this case. And just really quickly so you can see the difference that the smooth normals did. This is a new render that I did, and you can see the glass here is much, much better. The reflections are much less aliased, obviously, because the geometry was causing that aliasing there, so much better result. And if we go back one, this is the original, so that's a faceting we were getting. So much better result, huge render, and I think this render took the exact same amount of time. I think it was about 18 minutes. That's 33K by 3K, something like that. So anyway, just wanted to show you guys that.